If you love your Betta but you think you may need some company, then it can be hard to figure out which fish will go well in the tank. Well, Corydoras Catfish and Bettas can make great companions when certain conditions are matched. Keep watching to find out what those conditions are and how you can make it work. If you're going to keep Corydoras Catfish and Bettas together, then you need to make sure your Betta won't be aggressive. If you know that your Betta has an aggressive temperament, there's no fish that can live with him. However, if your Betta is peaceful, then here's everything you need to know to keep Corys with Bettas. What water conditions do Corydoras need? If you're going to add Corydoras Catfish to your tank, then you have to make sure the water conditions are good for them. While they are hardy fish, if the temperature or pH is too high or low, it could stress them out over time. Corys will need a pH between 7 to 7.8. 7 is the perfect pH level for Bettas, so as long as you keep the water as close to 7 as possible, then your Corys and Bettas will be fine. The only trouble you'll find is that Bettas can survive in slightly acidic environments, but not alkaline ones, so try to keep your pH at 7. Next up is the water temperature. A Betta's ideal temperature is 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and a Cory's is between 70 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Once again, you're going to need to be at one end of the spectrum. Keep your water temperature as close to 78 degrees Fahrenheit as possible, but don't worry too much if it goes a couple of degrees either way. The most important thing you can do is keep the tank as stable as possible. If you have a pH or temperature that's a little high or low, that's still better than having a tank that's constantly fluctuating. So how important are the water conditions for Corydoras Catfish? If you plan on keeping Corydoras Catfish, then you need to make sure that the water conditions are pristine, especially the nitrate levels. High levels of nitrate are going to cause your Corydoras lots of stress, which can make them more prone to disease. You should be testing your tank's nitrate levels regularly to make sure that they are at 0 ppm. Also, you should try to keep the substrate as undisturbed as possible. You'll need to vacuum it frequently, but you should do so in a way that won't disturb the substrate too much. If you kick up all the sand or gravel, not only will it stress all your fish out, but it will also release rotting food and feces back into your tank. This will increase the amount of bacteria and potentially cause your Cory and Betta to be susceptible to a whole range of diseases. Other than this, Corydoras are extremely hardy fish, and if you follow the instructions you've just learned, then they should be healthy and happy for a long time. What's a Corydoras ideal habitat? Corydoras Catfish and Bettas like similar habitats, so you can set your aquarium up to suit them both. Just like your Betta, they're not going to need a lot of space and can survive in tanks as small as 10 gallons. When it comes to decorating your tank, you should fill it with lots of live plants. This will make the tank feel more natural, and Corydoras and Bettas absolutely love them as well. On top of live plants, you should also consider adding decorations like driftwood and rocks. The key is to create a lot of hiding places for your fish. Both your Betta and Corydoras will want to get away from each other from time to time, so if you have hiding places for them, you enable this. This is really important for all fish and one thing that is often overlooked. And not only will plants provide hiding places, but they're also going to give your fish some new places to explore. If you're interested in breeding your Corydoras, then you should add wide leaf plants. This will give them plenty of room for spawning. You should also make sure that your aquarium has a lid on it. If you didn't know already, your Betta will often try to jump out of the tank. In the wild, they jump from pond to pond looking for new food, territory and mates. But as well as this, your Corydoras will also try jumping out of the tank, although probably not on purpose. It's not uncommon for Corydoras to swim to the surface of the tank for food, but if they swim too fast, they can literally clear the water altogether. Before adding Bettas or Corydoras to your tank, make sure that you've got the top covered completely. Lastly, make sure you've picked a suitable substrate for your Corydoras. You should use sand or small gravel. If you plan on using gravel, then make sure that it's not too rough or sharp, otherwise it's going to damage your Corydoras barbels. What is the temperament of the Corydoras Catfish? Every fish keeper, whether they're a novice or a veteran, know that Bettas don't have the greatest temperament. When finding fish that make suitable tank mates, you have to take this into consideration, and this is where Corydoras really come into their own. Corydoras are bottom dwellers, whereas Bettas like to stay near the top and middle of your tank. So you don't have to worry too much about your Betta attacking your Corydoras, because the chances are he won't feel threatened by them. While they're keeping themselves to themselves at the bottom of your tank, your Betta will be near the top. The only time this can change is when your Corydoras swim up for food. As previously mentioned, this can often result in them breaking the surface of the water, and if you don't have a lid on your tank, they can even jump out by mistake. Corydoras are peaceful fish that won't ever be aggressive towards your Betta. They are very sociable, however, and this is especially true when they're with their own kind. If you keep Corydoras in groups of 6 or more, you'll notice them schooling and foraging the bottom of your tank together. This is great for them, and if you keep them in a school, they will be extremely happy. This doesn't mean you can't keep them on their own, but for maximum happiness of your fish, you should keep them in groups. Even when one of them needs a break, even if they're not directly with the group, they'll always be within a couple of inches. What diet do they both have? When you're watching your Corydoras, you'll notice most of the time they are foraging at the bottom of the tank. They are often looking for any food they can eat. This will include food that your Betta missed, as well as any plant matter or small insects in the tank. They use their barbels and mouth to dig up parts of the substrate and eat the food underneath. However, this doesn't mean you never need to feed them. The chances are they won't get enough sustenance just from scavenging alone. Corydoras catfish are omnivores, so you can feed them a whole range of different food. You can use live, frozen, flakes and pellets for both types of fish, but make sure there's enough meat for your Betta. Also, to make sure your Corydoras are definitely getting enough food, you should also use sinking wafers. These are specifically designed for bottom feeders and will quickly drop to the bottom of the tank when they're added. When feeding your Corydoras and Betta, you only need to feed them a couple of times a day, and it should never last more than 2 minutes. Any longer than this and you risk overfeeding them. Make sure when you drop food in for your Betta, you're also dropping a sinking wafer in for your Corydoras. Your Betta should be too distracted by the other food in the tank, giving your Corydoras a chance to eat as well. Also, make sure you're buying high quality food. While low quality food is cheaper, it's not going to be packed with essential nutrients and may become costly when your fish inevitably becomes sick. Size and lifespan. You'll be pleased to know that Corydoras don't grow too big, so no matter what size tank you have, they'll probably fit. Their size ranges from 1 to 2.5 inches depending on the type of Corydoras that you purchase, and normally they are a lot bigger around their head than they are around their tail. And like most fish, they are going to live for 5 years when well looked after. This is the same amount of time Bettas live for as well, so adding Corydoras catfish is going to be quite the commitment to your tank, but this shouldn't bother you because they are great tank mates for your Betta. The time when Corydoras catfish are most likely to die is when they're first introduced to the tank. This is when they are more susceptible to shock from the new water conditions of your tank. However, with the right care, after this phase they will live for a long time. What Corydoras should you pick? Before you're ready to get some Corydoras and introduce them to your Betta, make sure you're picking the best ones. If you pick unhealthy, sick or weak Corydoras, it could result in your whole tank becoming infested with disease. You should avoid Corydoras that aren't moving a lot, seem sick or lethargic. Instead, look for Corydoras that are swimming around and appear active and healthy. Also, make sure you aren't buying any Corydoras that are injured. Pay special attention to their barbels, eyes and fins. If you notice a barbel or eye is missing, damaged, or a fin is damaged, then choose another Corydoras. And of course, if there are other sick fish in the tank, then you should avoid buying fish from there. Even if the one you choose seems fine, it could still be harbouring illness. Just a recap. As you can see, Corydoras catfish and Bettas make great tank mates. While Bettas will stay at the top of your tank, for the most part, Corydoras will stick to the bottom. Here are some of the main points to remember. Corydoras need a pH between 7 and 7.8, and Bettas need a pH of 7. Corydoras need a temperature between 70 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and Bettas need one as close to 78 degrees Fahrenheit as possible. Most importantly, make sure the nitrate levels in your tank stay at 0 ppm. Corydoras are particularly vulnerable to disease when nitrate levels become high. You can keep Corydoras on their own, but they will be much happier in groups. When feeding your Betta, make sure you also drop sinking wafers into your tank for your Corydoras. While they will eat a lot of leftover food off the bottom of the tank, they still won't be enough nutrients for them. A sandy substrate is best for Corydoras, as they are less likely to damage their barbels. And lastly, Corydoras can grow up to 2.5 inches in size and live for up to 5 years. If you like this video, then you should definitely check out the Ultimate Betta Tank Mate Guide, which is my ebook that has over 65 different tank mates for you to choose from. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, have a great day.